Bonjour tout le monde! That's French for hey y'all! I'm Forrest and this is the inaugural video of Food with Forrest. So thank you so much for being a part of this today. When we get back to the kitchen, we will be learning how to make Cretons. Now, many of you may not have heard of Cretons before, but I'm willing to bet that you've heard of pâté. Creton is a rustic style of pâté that originated in the French-speaking regions of Canada, where my grandparents are from. My mother grew up making this recipe and she learned it from her father, my grandfather. The main difference is that today we will be using a food processor, but back then they ground all of the ingredients by hand. If you're not a fan of liver, don't despair. This pâté, like many others, does not contain any liver, and it's a great first project if you've never done anything in charcuterie before. So with all of that said, I am so hungry, so let's get out of the park, back into the kitchen, and start cooking.
To a medium-large pot, add a piece of defrosted pork shoulder up to 3 pounds or 1.3 kilograms. Add just enough liquid to cover. I'm using some leftover liquid from whenever I boiled some sweet potatoes. Set that on medium heat for about an hour and a half. Next, we're gonna make our homemade breadcrumbs. I'm using some sourdough that I've cut up in cubes and let sit in a paper bag in my cupboard for a couple of days to get nice and dry. Place that all in a food processor and pulverize it until you reach a consistency like steel-cut oats or coarse ground coffee. It doesn't have to be perfect. After about an hour and a half, our pork shoulder should be cooked fully through and very tender. Remove it from the pot using some tongs or a fork and not your bare hands like I just tried to do, and place it on a cutting board. We're just gonna rough chop that into a few large pieces that will fit into our food processor. To our chopped pork shoulder, we're going to add 3 cups of roughly chopped onion, 3 to 5 cloves of garlic depending on your taste preference. And now for our spices. We have 1 tablespoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of pepper, 1.5 teaspoons of clove, 3/4 a teaspoon of allspice, 3/4 a teaspoon of cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, and 1/2 teaspoon of ginger. The ginger is optional, so add it if you'd like. Try both ways. Bring everything over to your food processor now and pulse it a couple times to break it down before setting it to puree for about a minute. We're aiming for a smooth, spreadable consistency, something like hummus. It's now time to add the broth and the breadcrumbs that we made. I'm using 2 cups of the cooking liquid from the pork shoulder. Add that right into the pot. You can add up to a cup of breadcrumbs per pound of meat. I recommend starting with slightly less. You can always add more as you go. I just feel like adding too many dilutes the taste of the spices and meat and broth.
Mix that all together over medium heat until all the excess liquid is evaporated. You can see I added some more broth because the amount of breadcrumbs I added absorbed all of the liquid and it became too dry. Once we've reached a consistency that is neither so wet that it is sticky or so dry that it is crumbly, go ahead and turn that out onto a parchment-lined sheet pan. We're going to use a rubber spatula or similar tool to pat that down, but don't be afraid to use clean hands to get it even more smooth. Set that in the freezer to firm up before we cut it into portion sizes. Use a blunt object such as a bench scraper or a butter knife and divvy it into about 12 pieces. Stack those in piles of 2 or 3 and wrap them tightly. You may store them in the fridge for up to a week or in the freezer for up to a month. Enjoy! Well, that was it. Pretty easy, huh? I really hope you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more like it, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. Please stay safe during this time, and most importantly, wear a mask. Bye again.